Pep. It's just wild to see this on the screen right now. These two men about to fight on March 8th, right before Alex Pereira Magomed Ankalaev. You could call it a barn burner. You could call it a heater. You could call it pure violence. But this could be projected to be one the fight of the year already in March. Justin Gaethje versus Dan Hooker. Not just two of the most violent lightweights, but two of the most violent fighters in the UFC. And they're coming off, both of them are in completely different trajectories coming off their last fights, right? Justin Gaethje coming off the craziest and one of the most violent knockouts and craziest moments in UFC history when he got slept by Max Holloway at UFC 300. Part of why that card was so legendary. I keep on mentioning that, UFC 300, but... And then you have Dan Hooker, who has slowly put together a nice win streak and then came off a war versus Mateusz Gamrot at 305 with a nice meme moment where he was saying, "Yeah, I love this." Like, I don't even know how to make a right Dan Hooker accent, but that was a crazy fight. I mean, I look at this new look, by the way, by Dan Hooker. I love this new look with the tattoos, this crazy skull on his chest. This new look Dan Hooker looks like someone to be reckoned with. Really gives him a great vibe as a fighter. And this fight, I could just feel it. Could be an absolute war the way it's advertised on paper. Justin Gaethje, arguably one of the hardest hitters. A lot of people consider him the hardest hitter in the UFC. Has had some really crazy knockout KOs. And yeah, 26-5 on Justin Gaethje, 24-12 on Dan Hooker. These guys have been around the UFC for quite a while now. And when you think of the lightweight division, we've had this kind of carousel between Gaethje, Oliveira, Hooker, Poirier, and Chandler. These guys have circulated constantly in the lightweight division. Sometimes it feels like the matchups get competitive, repetitive. Excuse my little misstep there. So yeah, these guys have just been cycling through each other, but I will admit it will be kind of, I think I could speak for everyone when we say we're all going to be very sad when all these guys leave the UFC one day. We all know Dustin Poirier has his last fight scheduled later this year, very soon. He's teasing New Orleans. Michael Chandler, I don't know, is turning into kind of a gatekeeper at the moment, but the UFC still seems to be teasing him some fun fights like Paddy Pimblett or Arman Tsarukyan, which definitely better not happen. You better not get Arman Tsarukyan. And Justin Gaethje, who, if he loses in some kind of crazy violent way, just like he did to Max Holloway, this could very well be his last fight. He said it. There was like a video of him at Topgolf or something. He said that if he gets dropped again, if he goes to sleep, he will retire. But if he wins, then, which I doubt will happen, Islam, I believe, in his next fight will move either up or down. Whether that's fighting Ilia Topuria, whether Ilia Topuria moves up and fights him, or Islam moves up to a middleweight or lightweight. I do not believe he's going to fight Justin Gaethje next. But hypothetically, Justin Gaethje could fight Islam next, because Islam has said he would be open to fighting Justin Gaethje since he hasn't fought him yet. So yeah, there's a lot of upside here, or a big downside to Justin Gaethje, either winning or losing. For Dan Hooker, it only goes up from here, right? If he wins, that would mean he's on a 4-fight win streak, beating Justin Gaethje. He would be given a top 3 guy or be waiting in the wings for a title shot. However that played out. And yeah, you just look at these guys, right? They've been in the UFC for quite a while. Dan Hooker, in his last 3 fights, beat Mateusz Gamrot, as I just mentioned, at 305, an absolute war. Jalen Turner, also decision, beat him. Dan Hooker versus Claudio Puelles, beat that guy. I'm not sure who that is, to be honest. Please don't smoke me if I'm supposed to know who that is. Dan Hooker versus Arnold Allen. He lost that fight and then lost to Islam Makhachev, lost to Michael Chandler, lost in a crazy fight to Dustin Poirier, absolute slugfest and a war, but beat Nasrat Haqparast, and then a bunch of other fights in his catalog. So Dan Hooker, the narrative around him is he has been in the lightweight rankings for a very long time, has gotten up there a couple times and then went on a little bit of a downturn, but has been on this resurgence, as you can see with these last 3 fights, to now where he's in this position to possibly beat Justin Gaethje and be further to his title dreams. Then you got Justin Gaethje, a very beloved fighter in the UFC, a fan favorite because of his entertaining style, one of the hardest hitters, and has had some classic knockouts in the UFC. He really has only lost to absolute legends, right? Has lost to Charles Oliveira, lost to Max Holloway in his last fight, UFC 300, lost to Khabib Nurmagomedov when he was the interim belt, I believe, and he won that belt off Tony Ferguson. Knocked out Michael Chandler, knocked out Dustin Poirier for the BMF belt, beat Rafael Fiziev, which is a great win. And also, I remember he had a crazy fight with Michael Johnson. Also beat Edson Barbosa, Donald Cerrone. So these guys have some pretty good resumes that they've built up in the UFC. They've been around for a while. Yeah, these guys are just pure violence whenever they step on that into that octagon, and whoever they fight. Just look at their highlights. Look at Dan Hooker. Look at Justin Gaethje. These guys don't F around, bro. They bring it to every single fight. And I think it's just going to be amazing seeing these guys when that bell rings on the first round, to see them slug in the pocket, throw some crazy haymakers, and we could possibly see another incredible violent knockout. I'm not really leaning towards either guy. I'm really not. But if I had to pick, I think Justin Gaethje could get it done. But this is the violent dream fight that I have been waiting for. It's an MMA hardcore fans' dream fight to see Dan Hooker fight Justin Gaethje, and it's happening March 8th, right before Alex Pereira and Magomed Ankalaev. And yeah, it's just amazing when I continue to look at this card. I think it's a pretty good card. Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev, Justin Gaethje versus Dan Hooker, King Green versus Mauricio Ruffy. As you can see, a very Brazil-themed card. Marion Santos. And yeah, there's still more fights to be announced. I've already said that I think one more great featured fight with some name value, and this card could be complete. But of course, if any of these top 3 fights fall out, card could be in trouble, right? So hopefully this card sticks, especially these last 2 fights. Those are my early thoughts on Justin Gaethje versus Dan Hooker. Cannot wait.